Friends. So exciting to see so many people here from all over the yearly meeting and beyond. I'm Mary Link. I'm a co-clerk of the Legacy Gift Committee, along with Sue Rockwood, who is somewhere on the screen as well, and other members of the Legacy Gift Committee. I can't see everybody on the screen, so I don't know if they're all here, but they include Krishna Evans, Ed Mayer, Craig Jensen, Sarah Gant, and Leslie Manning. And several of them are here and have helped prepare this workshop for tonight. I also want to note that some gratitude to Maureen Flannery, who is a member of my spiritual accountability group, and both participating and holding me and the gathering tonight. The Legacy Gift Committee of New England Yearly Meeting not only provides grants, but in part of that process, we require that each grantee has an oversight of ministry committee or a supportive ministry committee. And for some meetings, that's been an easy thing to do, something they're familiar with. For other meetings, that's been a foreign thing and something to try to figure out, how do we do that? What does that mean? And so this workshop came together to, along with help from Nia Thomas and the yearly meeting office, to help try to start answering some of those questions and explore them together. We want to, we hope that by the end of the evening, you'll all have a little bit better idea of the art of support and accountability and discernment that this process can provide, and have something useful to take back both for yourself and your meeting. We are recording tonight, at least the whole group pieces, so that people who were not able to be here will be able to still see this afterwards. So be advised that anything that's shared in the whole group, that will be recorded. When you're in the small groups later on, those won't be recorded. Let's see. We will start by, we're going to have a panel and breakout, followed by breakout groups. And then we will come back together to pull out some observations and learnings from that. And then towards the end, Nia will share resources, which she has already begun sharing with you on the online documents. We're going to start by hearing from a larger meeting with a long, deep experience providing oversight of ministry committees, and that's Mount Toby meeting, which also happens to be my own meeting. We will be hearing from Ruth Hazard and Jim Lyons, and their background is in the bio information that you got in the introductory email. And following them will be a smaller meeting with newer experience of supporting an emerging ministry, and that's Vassalboro. And then we'll have Kevin Lee, a recorded minister with decades-long support from the yearly meeting and wider New England friends, sharing. Then there'll be, the panel will include perspectives from all of the roles, from the roles of minister, supporting oversight committees, and ministry and council bodies that care for those committees. And the introductions for each of the speakers on the panel, again, are written in your introduction. So we're not going to take time to repeat that now, but we welcome them all warmly. The panel will have 5 minutes each, and let's see, do we have a process for a timer? Or shall I just be keeping time and giving a warning when you've got 1 minute left?
That would be good, Mary, if you can. And we also do wish to make time for questions But what we're asking you to do is hold your questions until all the panelists have spoken. Write them down so you don't forget them, but they may be answered by one of the subsequent speakers.
Great, thank you. So we'll start by welcoming Ruth Hazard from Mount Toby.
I'm going to yield first to Jim Lyons and let him begin.
Okay.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Jim Lyons from Mount Toby. And about a little more than 20 years ago, we established our first formal oversight of ministry committee. Before then, we did various kinds of recognition for people with gifts. We had Andrea Vazian, who went to divinity school, who needed a committee. Karen Adams, who had a ministry to abused children, who we made a released friend. We supported her financially. Randy Keeler was in jail, and so we appointed Alan Eccleston as a minister so he could visit unimpeded. And Irene Michaud for after Katrina went to New Orleans area and coordinated a lot of the mental health work down there. So we had some experience with that, but our first formal oversight committee was for Jan Hoffman. And Jill, my wife, and I were on that first committee, and just after it was formed, we went to yearly meeting and were taken aside by Chuck McCorkle and Kenneth Sutton from Beacon Hill, who wanted to tell us how to do it. And he did, or they did. They said our job was to love Jan, to pray for Jan, and to take her in hand. And we had to do that accountability piece as part of the formal oversight. Since then, we've had a number of oversight committees. There are currently in our meeting, there are 6 different committees, oversight of ministry committees. And we do these to ground the ministry in our meeting, 1, and 2, to release their ministry. In other words, a lot of times people with a strong calling to ministry get distracted, and the distractions come in a variety of ways. Sometimes they go off in directions that they may not really want to, or they don't realize where they're going. And it helps to have a regular group of people who oversee what they're doing and to give direction and advice. The other part of it is to inform the rest of the meeting. Like Mary said, ours is a relatively large meeting, and we, a lot of people don't know what's going on in terms of what the ministers are doing. And so there's a reporting process at least once a year, generally, where we report formally, both the minister and the committee, to the meeting, and it becomes part of our regular process.
You have 1 minute, Jim.
Okay. Mary mentioned her mutual spiritual accountability group. We do have some of those working. I'm not sure how many. Mary could probably tell you. In addition to formal oversight committees, one of the things we try to do is, one of the challenges of having so many oversight committees is finding people who are sufficiently grounded to staff them. Right now, there's no overlap. So Mary or Ruth, I guess, back to Ruth.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. I thought I would simply outline, I mean, this was one of the requests sort of that we received, was to outline the process. So this is kind of the nitty gritty, but it is important when, I think, when you're trying to think about how to do this. And I know that some of this process, we leaned on Fresh Pond meeting, but we start with the friends leading, either being noticed by others or feeling strongly that persistent leading in themselves. And they write a letter of request to Ministry and Worship Committee, asking to meet with a clearness committee to discern if their leading might be taken under the care of the meeting. So Ministry and Worship sort of oversees this whole process of letting names rise with a convener and one person who's a member of Ministry and Worship. That committee meets and listens and asks questions and determines with the person they're meeting with, is this a leading, a ministry that is something that Mount Toby should, can, will take under its care? And they make a recommendation to Ministry and Worship. If the recommendation's yes and Ministry accepts it, then the nomination process is used to form an oversight committee, generally 3 people, terms for 1 year at a time and renewed often for many years or a few years or 1 year. And the authority to create that and to do this process rests with Ministry and Worship. If the decision is no, then the action may be suggesting a mutual accountability group, or sometimes there might be a short-term committee for seasoning and discernment with the person involved. And the Ministry and Worship brings to meeting for business that the ministry has been taken under their care and presents aloud, reading aloud a document that the ministry, has been taken under our care, and the meeting accepts that. So then in the process, there's generally a monthly meeting. The friend does some reflection and writing in advance. There may be queries, and I asked that Nia load up a document with a series of possible queries that I think was originally developed with Jan's committee. But it's helpful to have some queries to guide the writing. And then, as Jim said, annually there's a report brought from the committee and from the meeting, from the person carrying the ministry, which gives us space in the meeting for business for everyone to hear, to kind of take in, to support, and to feel like a participant in that ministry. There are other ways sometimes the ministry is shared with the meeting, either through a program, after meeting, or in some cases, maybe inviting the whole meeting to be part of some project that the minister is called to do. We have a liaison from Ministry and Worship if the committee needs any support. And thus far in our experience, the laying down of a committee has always been initiated by the person carrying the ministry, either because maybe they're moving and they're not carrying it with them, maybe a health issue, maybe it's just there's a new direction and they don't feel a need for an oversight committee. Whatever it is, it's always been, for our experience, their initiative. So I think I have a minute left. I thought
Yep.
I might just touch on a couple of things. The difference between ministry and oversight of ministry and support. A couple of quotes from some of our documents. One is, it's like having an oversight of ministry is like having the minister and the oversight committee in the outer circle and the ministry in the center. Support is the care of the minister. And another reading, support is offered to an individual as a function of love and caring for that person. Oversight is offered to a person carrying a ministry as a function of helping the minister to maintain faithfulness to the ministry and discern its development. So I think I'll stop there. I think my time is about up, so I'll pass it on.
Thank you, Ruth. Next, we're going to hear from Brianna Hollowell and Marilyn Pukilla from Vassalboro meeting, and where Brianna is the minister and Marilyn is on her Oversight Committee. I'm not sure which of you is going first, so whoever it is, jump on in.
What would you like to do, Brianna?
I would love to hear from you first, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
So just a few comments. Generally, Vassalboro is an unprogrammed meeting, so we don't have a tradition of registering ministers and registering their gifts per se. We did have someone who felt a leading to minister to the police department in Atlanta. That had started before I became a part of Vassalboro and came to a close a couple years after I joined. So the request came to Ministry and Council, and I'm clerk of Ministry and Council, but that's not why I was chosen to be a member of Brianna's Oversight Committee. This is my first time doing ministerial care. I didn't have any guidelines or booklets or people to contact because it's an unusual form of ministry, and Brianna will share that with you. And I say unusual in a very, very positive way. I'm finding that the work is not unlike a clearness committee, except that in addition to listening carefully and asking questions, one also responds to what one hears. And in my experience, it requires deep listening and it requires discernment. We had one group meeting concerning finances. I hope people don't want to ask me about the financial side because that is not in my gift. But we did all meet with our treasurer and the clerk of finance and the former treasurer, plus Brianna and myself, to get some things sort of all on the same page. But beyond that, any of you wishing more information around those lines is going to have to talk with some of our finance people. In the course of writing back and forth with Brianna, discussing who might be a good person from Vassalboro to serve on her committee, I was delighted to discover that my spiritual journey and particular skills and knowledge meshed really comfortably with Brianna's path. And I'm also grateful that there's another member of the committee who certainly strikes me as an elder. And I had the perception that she had known Brianna longer than I had, but Brianna and I were just talking on the phone tonight, and she told me that, in fact, no, not particularly. So I guess in that sense, we're both fairly new to her, but it seems to be working just fine. I ran out of, let's see, I started at what, 23 minutes? So
You have 2 more minutes, maybe.
Okay.
About 2 more minutes.
I know that there are procedures in place in many meetings, and we've heard from Ruth and her colleague at Mount Toby about very described structures, and this is wonderful. In our case, we have no particular structures. We have no precedent. We have no form and format, but the one piece that really has informed all of my work in this, I see myself, excuse me, not as a director, but as a mentor. And I invite you to consider the difference between those two words. And as an example of what I mean by that, I'll offer you my final thought. We are what they grow beyond. That is the task of all mentors. And I will turn it over to Brianna. And if I have any extra time, she can have it.
Thank you. I would just add it before she speaks, just to note that you also, and maybe Brianna's going to say this, that you also went beyond your meeting to find the committee members.
Yes, that is true. Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Marilyn. I think as Marilyn shared, I do have a, in the scheme of the history of ministries that we're familiar with and that I've heard of, I think my ministry is rather unusual or unique in that I am being supported in full-time ministry through the legacy gift, a legacy grant that I received last fall, right after yearly meeting sessions, when the ministry that started to become alive in me and had been alive for many, many years, but hadn't been sparked fully until yearly meeting sessions kind of came to a bright enough flame that others were starting to notice and encouraging me to find the means to support this ministry in full-time work, as I had stepped away from my previous employment after many years of trying to work for mostly minimum wage jobs to live out my values in the world and try to do the ministry stuff on the side, and always felt an inner conflict of recognizing that there is so much work to be done in the world and so many people and organizations and places that were calling me into working with them to start to create the changes that I wish to see in the world. And I was unable to respond to those calls because I was too busy trying to support myself and try to take care of the nonprofit organizations that I was working for and try to live out what I thought was my call, but was really, in some ways, were more of the distractions. I think tonight it's feeling really important for me to share that this kind of journey into the experimentation of full-time ministry has come with a lot of challenges. There's been a tremendous amount of love and support and guidance, and I feel extremely blessed, especially to be a part of New England Yearly Meeting Friends and to have had a mentor relationship with Mary Link, who first introduced me to the Legacy Gift Committee as a possibility, and to have received that grant. And just want to name that despite having such a wonderful community and such a significant amount of financial support from the yearly meeting, that there is still this deep-seated core belief, both within myself and within people on the committees that I'm part of and people who I have conversations with within Quakerism, that money is evil, and that in order to serve in the role of a minister, that we should not be financially, that our financial support should not come as a result of our ministry. And a really beautiful, not beautiful, but example of this came up in some of the documents that Nia had shared from the Central Philadelphia monthly meeting. One of the quotes in the section Financial Support of Ministries talks about the tradition among Friends of avoiding a hireling ministry. I'll just quickly read this quote from George Fox likened hireling priests in the compulsory tithes by which they were paid to the false prophets mentioned in the Bible. Robert Barclay wrote, "Those who have received this holy and unspotted gift have received it without cost and should give it without charge. They should certainly not use it as a trade to earn money." But on the other hand, Barclay goes on to say in the same paragraph, "If God has called any of them from their regular employment or the trade by which they earn their living, they should receive such worldly necessities as food and clothing. It is lawful for them to accept these as far as they feel allowed by the Lord, and as far as they are freely and cordially given by those with whom they have shared spiritual matters." And those those two paragraphs kind of name the conflict that I've been experiencing and that we've been talking about within my oversight committee, about that we're living in such different times than Fox lived in, and that the way to support ministry now is because we don't have the same sort of intimate community setup and ability to support one another just through clothing and food, that there is a new need to start to reconsider how we view money, and rather than see it as coming from the root of like greed or the root of the seed of the serpent, that we need to start envisioning it as a resource to support ministry and allowing individuals such as myself and so many others who have ministry that is within them that needs to be expressed, that like money is just a tool to be used and is not the evil that should be avoided at the risk of taking the integrity out of the ministry. And
Your time is almost up.
perfect, thank you. Yeah, the one other thing I wanted that kind of came up as I was thinking about what to say tonight was these two thoughts came to me. That was, it isn't up to the minister to decide what the ministry is. And at least in my case, from what I found, and I think this is true of many ministries, that is difficult to wrap our minds around when we have all of these rules and regulations about how to support ministry. That ministry is a constantly evolving, ongoing process of revelation and reaction, not a singular time-bound event or project. And so I'm just sitting with how to live in this place of integrity and following ministry within the confines of our understanding of what financial support looks like and how to do it full-time without other employment. Thank you.
Thank you, Brianna. Kevin, I can't see the screen anymore, just the speaker, so I hope you'll step up now.
You go, Brianna. Well said. Thank you. My experience in ministry is a little different than a couple of other things that have been shared this evening. Friends at New England Yearly Meeting recognized that something was stirring in me having to do with ministry back in 1983, and it was Tracy Booth, who was serving on Yearly Meeting MNC at the time, who essentially called me out, sat me down, and said, "You will have a support committee." I didn't even know what it was at that time. Long story short, it eventually made it over to the quarterly meeting, and I've had usually 3, 4, sometimes 5, which is too many people, on a support and oversight committee over the years, and from various monthly meetings around New England Yearly Meeting. And currently my support and oversight committee is comprised of Jerry Carson, Wendell Ross, and Pamela Druin, with one person, Pamela, from my meeting, and the rest from the other 2 friends are from Wellesley meeting. But when I was recorded, my ministry was recorded back in 91, there were 2 minutes that took place. The minute of recording, which was 2 sentences long, and a required support and oversight committee that was 3 or 4 sentences long. And the reason is that Salem's quarterly meeting has had a history of recording gifts in ministry over the years, and they have had 1 or 2 times when those ministries have gone awry. So they corrected that with instituting a process of having a support and oversight committee attached with it. And that has stayed with me with my membership within the monthly meeting ever since. And so that was in 1991, it was recorded. And I will say that being a recorded minister is both a blessing and a burden. A blessing because it opens doors. It helps to make some things happen. It saves me from having to spend a lot of time explaining things. And it's also a burden because there are some friends, members of the Religious Society of Friends, that get hung up about it, and they get all caught up in this whole thing of someone's being elevated above the other. And if my experience is, if you're doing ministry properly, there are no great benefits in terms of digs and status and all that stuff. It is a joyous burden to be able to do the ministry. And it's also a burden out there socially among friends at times, not all the time, and less so than it used to be years ago. And the funny thing is for me is that, so I was really called to a ministry of pastoral care to children and families. So I started taking some courses in seminary, and I got to seminary and some people would say, well, wait a minute, you're already recorded minister, why are you here? But I wanted to take these courses. So I ended up picking up an MD over time, which has been very valuable. I think it's been helpful for me to have friends who were on my support and oversight committee who have been from all over New England yearly meeting, because it brings a different perspective into the work and the ministry. And I do want to say one item about being financial matters. For much of my adult life, I had 2 part-time jobs and then had the good fortune of starting the JYM retreat program back in 1988 and received a lot of support from New England friends for that completely. And when I decided to go to seminary and I applied to the Obadiah Brown Benevolent Fund, they paid for not one semester, they paid for my entire master's divinity program. The entire thing came from Obadiah Brown. And that has really made it possible for me to finish seminary and give me additional skills that come in handy to this day. So I think I'm happy that as friends, we are starting to evolve to a different place in how we are approaching money and financial assistance and so forth when a person is called to ministry.
You got about a minute.
And I'll close with this little thing. So I'm doing this clinical pastoral education course at Hasbro Children's Hospital. And I had a supervisor that would oversee our work out on the floor, working with kids and so forth. And we would open up our group with 5 or 6 ministers from different denominations every morning with our work. And so, and I said, I wanted a good supervisor. I didn't want a wimpy supervisor. I wanted somebody who was really going to challenge me. And I got Sister Rita. And when I closed my eyes for opening prayers, she looked at me and sat and yelled, "Kevin, what are you doing? Are you sleeping over there?" And I said, "No, sister, this is how we as friends choose to pray much of the time." So that was just a lighter moment in the journey, but one that I am grateful for to this day. Thank you, friends.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank all of you friends who have shared with us. And now we're going to take about 20 minutes in moving into breakout rooms. And in those breakout rooms, there'll be about 4 people in each breakout room. And we're going to ask you, we'll put the question in the chat as well, but to just reflect on what resonated for you that you want to bring back to your meeting from listening to these friends sharing, and what might be one next step you or your meeting might take in support of ministry. And we don't have the capacity to keep timers, so with 4 people and 20 minutes, we recommend that you take maybe 3 minutes each for a go round, and then use the remaining time to have discussion amongst you, but let each person have a chance to speak individually first. And somebody, Nia, is going to, I think, move you into breakout rooms.
All right. See you in about 20 minutes, friends.
And the questions are in chat now.
Welcome back, friends. Mary, I think we are back from our groups. Are you back from your group, Mary Link? Leslie, would you like to jump in?
Oh, me? Of
Mary
course I
is
would.
back.
Oh,
Good.
Mary's back. Hi, Mary, we are back.
Sorry, my screen was doing all kinds of funny things, and I think it's all coming together now. Okay. We'd like to take the next 10 minutes to just share with each other a little bit about, what did you hear or talk about in the breakout rooms that seemed wise or courageous, or struck you in a particular way that you would like to try to share with the whole group. And we have only about 10 minutes, and you can do one of two things. You can type into the chat, and Sarah Gant will collect those and read them. Or you can try raising your hand, and I'm hoping that since I can't see you all at once, that some others will help me notice where people are raising their hands.
To raise your hand, you can either use the raise hand function by going onto the participants list, or go under reactions, I believe, and use it that way. Or you can wave your hand in front of your camera and we will attempt to catch you. So.
And here are some of the messages that are coming to chat, which I'll read aloud for all. There are different ways to do this, not just one process that works for everyone. Good to have a robust structure, a trellis, for the plant to grow and to bear fruit. My meeting and another have people who are doing things that may benefit from a more deliberate process of support. Appreciate learning more about the vision of the legacy programs. I heard from somebody who supported the support groups that were formed around their ministers. Everyone up and down the process needs to be held in a place of prayer and of support. If we are concerned about elevating a person, we can recognize the process being called, which that person is responding to. People in my meeting feel that others providing feedback or assistance to others in being faithful violates others' individuality. The relationship of the minister in the meeting, to whom is the gift given? Everyone is in a special transition right now, from ministers to those supporting ministers, spanning the Southwest to Midwest to Northeast. Motivation to notice and call in budding ministries. Some tension in being unprogrammed meetings or small meetings without a history of ministers or eldership or naming gifts. Struck by the financial tension and happy for New England yearly meeting support. Feeling uncomfortable offering hard questions to not wanting to create hierarchy, but servant leader model as opposed to worldly power over model. There is still ambivalence and confusion about special individuals versus ministry as a gift from God to the meeting via an individual. A member of our group asked, if there are no ministries in the meeting, what does that say? I founded a nonprofit Quaker ministry, then participated in a mutual accountability group, and then went to Council, Ministry, and Worship Committee to discuss forming a support committee. My meeting does not use words like oversee, oversight, but counsel, support. In the tension between being our own individual authorities and part of a group with long histories and traditions, where does authority lie? The difference between support and oversight. Support is focused on the person. Oversight is focused on the ministry coming through the person. All have spiritual gifts. Authority lies in spirit. And if the minister has no home meeting, where do they find a group to which to be faithful? I appreciate the distinction made between ministry and minister. Focusing on the former decenters the individual as integral to the ministry and holds up the ministry as going beyond a particular individual. Good to know that this support is available. I will take this back to my meeting. Some have gifts that they are searching for the path to fruition. Some of the newer, not growing out of the two older yearly meetings in New England, had a strong resistance to recognize gifts of ministry in individuals. Connecticut Valley Quarterly Meeting was one quarterly meeting that took a long time to accept this idea as part of right Quaker practice.
Thank you for all of these thoughts and questions, and some that are questions we will perhaps take back and think about how we might share some reflections going forward. And at the end of our formal time together tonight, we'll have several of us will hang out for some time afterwards where we can continue some of that discussion. Right now, we're going to shift to Nia Thomas to share some information about further resources available for us.
Thanks, Mary. Hi, friends. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nia Thomas, and I serve on staff of New England Yearly Meeting. And I'm going to share my screen for a moment and just share a few resources that might be of interest to you. And everything that I mention in the next few minutes will also be sent to you in a follow-up email that you'll receive later this evening. So feel free to just sit back and listen. And I'll also just let you know that I'm someone who, when I'm talking and presenting, I can't pay attention to the chat. So Sarah, if someone says something that I really need to know while I'm talking, you go ahead and verbally interrupt me. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So this is my favorite website, and I want to share it with you all. It's neym.org. There are a lot of resources here that may be of interest to you. If you go to this Strengthen Your Local Meeting section right at the top of the homepage, you can see that there's then pages about specific aspects of meeting life. And if you click on a lot of them, like I'm going to choose Care for One Another right now, it will take you to a page called Caring for Ministers and Ministries, which I think we're going to have to add some new resources onto after tonight. So thank you all for helping to grow our website. But this provides some basic information and some basic next steps on all of our pages on our website. I encourage you to keep scrolling even when the color changes, because there are often downloads with more resources, and there's more than you might think when you first see it. And you'll also see that on this page, in addition to a link to the relevant section from Faith and Practice, you'll also see that there's a page called Funds Supporting Ministry, which might be interesting to you. And on this page, you'll see about a lot of different funds that are available. And I just want to highlight a couple of them. One I want to highlight, and this again will be in the follow-up email, that the Salem Quarterly Meeting Funds, which is relevant to those of you in the greater Boston area, has just extended their deadline. And so I've included information about that and who to contact if you're interested in that in the follow-up email. And I also want to highlight, of course, our hosts, the New England Yearly Meeting Legacy Gift Fund. So you can click that and get more information. You can also find information by using the search function on our website. So you don't need to remember the specific pathway that I took to get here. And you'll see on this page that the next deadline coming up for the Witness and Ministry Fund is March 15th. And if you have specific questions about that, I encourage you to hang on or click the email link in the follow-up email to continue the conversation with folks on that committee. So that's the funds page that I want to make sure you're all aware of. I also know that, you know, sometimes what you're looking for is, you know, to set up a oversight of ministry committee and explore funding. And sometimes the right next step for friends in your meeting or for your meeting as a whole might be something more like a mutual spiritual accountability group, or a model that I know many friends in New England are using in their local meetings, like faithfulness groups, which is like a rotating supportive model. And so I'll just show you on our website, we have a lot of resources about what faithfulness groups are. And I'll also share that in our yearly meeting, there are friends who are very much willing to come and visit your meeting and talk about what faithfulness groups could look like in your meeting and to explain the practice. I'll also include in the follow-up email some resources about kind of deeper end faith formation programs. I know that sometimes supporting a minister or an emerging ministry or a friend walking with a leading is about, you know, finding them the education or support that they could use outside of your meeting. And not all friends are ready, like Kevin, to jump into a a multiple year master's program, but might be ready for something that's a little bit more intensive than, your 1 hour a week adult religious education that's happening in your local meeting. So we'll include some links to School of the Spirit and the Nurturing Faithfulness program and the Stoking the Fire retreat, just so you can be aware of what's out there. And, oh, shoot, one more thing I wanted to highlight on the website, just to make sure you're all aware that every 2 weeks, the yearly meeting, we offer a check-in space for local meeting leaders. This is a space to reflect on what's going on in the life of your meeting, and to reflect with others who are serving their meeting. So whether you're specifically serving in a role like on the ministry and council of your local meeting, or whether you're just caring for the meeting as a whole more informally, if you're looking for peers in that service, you are welcome to come to these calls. And I've included in the follow-up email information about how to get reminders about these calls and information about upcoming themes as they're announced. They happen every 2 weeks on Tuesday evenings. And finally, my last little announcement to share is that if this has been a wonderful evening for you, and this conversation about nurturing ministry and nurturing the spiritual health of your meeting is on your heart, I've got good news for you, which is that the yearly meeting has recently approved offering seasonal day-long gatherings on the topic of nurture of ministry and spiritual life. The first one will be happening late this spring, and in the next few weeks, you will be getting a save the date followed by an invitation, and you and any other friends in your meeting are invited. You are welcome to come, and details will be coming soon. And I wonder if folks who are part of the hosting or eldering team, if you just want to wave if your camera's on. I know a handful of you are out there. And just one last thing that I will say is also in your follow-up email will be a feedback form. And if you have certain hopes or questions or feedback that comes to mind when you think about that upcoming gathering that you or others from your meeting might attend, I'd really encourage you to put that in your feedback form, because that will be really helpful to the folks who are creating the next place where we get to have this conversation together as friends in New England.
And Nia, there were a few things that came up in chat while you were speaking. Would you remind us about if the video of this, if the recording will be accessible, and how would friends get the link to that?
Let me just double check with all the panelists, and then, but assuming that they are all okay with that, I can share with all the registrants in a few days a YouTube link.
Okay, and maybe two other things. Jen Hoffman wants to remind us that in New England, it is quarterly meetings, not the yearly meeting, that records. And Viv Hawkins, hello, welcome Viv, wants to remind friends that releasingministry.org is a free list that you can be part of to publicize and fundraise for a ministry. And there's a shout out both to Marcel Martin and to the Tuesday night calls.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everybody. I think that once the video is available, it will be available also for others, not just the people who are on this call. We're winding down, and so I just want to thank everybody who participated, all of our panelists and members of the committee that helped pull this together, and Nia, of course, and all of you for coming and spending this evening with us. We're going to close with a little bit of waiting worship, and then the formal part of this evening will be ending at 8:30. And anyone who wants to stay after that, several of us will be hanging around to have further discussion or answer questions until 9. Thank you all so much for coming, and we hope that this has been helpful. Who are on the Legacy Gift Committee, it's an incredible blessing to be serving in that role for all of you, and the opportunity that we have to learn about places and people in whom the Spirit is moving amongst us. Certainly not all, but only those that come to us is an incredible blessing to have that experience, and to be able to share with you all that the Spirit does seem to be quite well and alive as it is moving amongst us in all parts of the yearly meeting. Thank you for being with us tonight. This officially closes the end, and we'll just open, Nia can open everybody's microphones or whatever. I don't know quite how we'll share. Some of us will hang around if there are questions or further discussion. We'll be here for a while. Thank you, friends.